Okay, so this is the third class of Intermediate Kabbalah. I want to first say that it's so important that you have regular time that you set aside on a weekly, daily, whatever basis for spirituality. And you'll see kind of like when you get in the routine of eating at certain times and then you get hungry at those times, you'll kind of realize that there's like this need for spirituality. And if you don't have class on Wednesdays, you might even feel, like something. So even if we don't have class, try to like listen to a podcast, read a book, do something to get that fix in. Has anyone noticed anything the last few weeks from what we've learned? No? Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Actually, like how you know how you said it's like God speaking through you.
Yeah.
The last time my husband was having a conversation with his brother, and the things that were coming, I think he was trying to console him in a way, but it was so negative. So then after he was done, I was like, can you stop this conversation or change it or whatever? And then afterward, I was like, Jonathan, whatever you're saying, it's like God speaking through you, and I don't want you to use those words in a negative way. Even if you're consoling him, it shouldn't be in a negative, like, not that he was bashing his brother,
right.
He was like agreeing on him, like, yeah, you're right, that person's bad, da da da. I was like, just can you change it, or like change the perspective for Nathan to look at it in a different way? And he's like, okay, yeah. And I'm like, I'm listening. Liam is sitting here, even though he's kind of picking up what you're saying, and I don't want him to use that later on with a friend. So I don't know. It was more mine. Usually I would have just been like, whatever. He's having a conversation with his brother. But this time I was like, no, your words are so powerful. Like, change it. It changes the aura of our house. So I kind of like. He's like, where is it? I'm like, this is Sarah's classes.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to piggyback on that. So our whole point in learning Kabbalah or learning any kind of spirituality is that
It's cold here.
I turned off the AC.
Oh, okay.
Is that you're moving yourself aside and you're creating a channel, so you're a pipe kind of for the light of the Creator. Okay, learning this is not where the light is. Kabbalah is not the energy. Kabbalah and any kind of spirituality that you're learning is how you're plugging in to the energy force. You might want to pull up a chair from the dining room. Sorry. So that's like an important thing to recognize, so that when we're doing things, you don't think like, I was successful in that. Right? It wasn't. It was the light that channeled through you that allowed the success to happen. Right? Like when do we reach out to God?
When we need something.
When we need something, right? It's like they call it an act of God. What happens when there's like a disaster? Like, you don't need God when you're happy, when things are going well. You're kind of like, stay out of my business. But it's recognizing that even that good, even the success, when it's like flowing, it's flowing because you're connected to source, because God is allowing that to happen. So we want to be channels. We want to be like a river. You don't want to be like a swamp, right? So always like have that analogy. The way it came up for me this week, right, is when you feel offended, right? What's happening when you're offended?
Ego.
It's me, right? Instead of recognizing that this is a them thing. Okay, I did a lot of notes on signs, but I'm not feeling to talk about that. What I do want to mention again is our last class we spoke about, we have a body and we have the soul, and then we have that middle area, which is where all the fun part is, all of our tip point, right? So we're going to learn today about the reactive system. What happens when you're reactive? Let's say I'm fighting with, she's to my right, so I'm just going to use her as an example. Let's say I'm fighting with Susan. Let's say I yell at Susan or my child or my husband or whoever. What happened in that moment that I was reactive? I had a challenge, right? I was reactive. Where does the light go in a reactive? What did we say last week? It goes to? Yes. And then we went a little bit more and said, what does that mean when it goes to Satan? And we spoke about that that area here, remember? I had another piece of paper that you guys printed out. You had the Klippot, you had your body, you had your soul, and you had this spiritual membrane where your tikkun is held, right? So let's say I get triggered because I'm impatient at my child and I yell at my child. I lose light. That light goes to the klipa, the shell of impatience. Okay, so let's do another analogy. I want to take it back one more step. Let's say, again, I yell at my child. Instead of pausing, connecting to the light and having the light enter my vessel, I yell. The light enters for a second. It feels good, right? You feel good when you yell, otherwise you wouldn't do it. Immediately what happens? Bread of shame, you lose your light, the curtain drops. So now there's a curtain between your vessel and the source of light, right? That light gets trapped in, I imagine like a bubble. Is it really a bubble? I don't think so. But I imagine like a little like sphere.
That's when anger enters. Anger is what traps
Your reactivity is that you lose your light. That light gets lost. It goes into, and this is kind of how I imagine it. So I'm sorry that I'm putting whether it's right or wrong, limitations on you guys. Now imagine I have this shell, this hollow ball, and the energy that I lost by yelling at my child is now encapsulated in here. It's trapped. And it's trapped in here in that middle section, that membrane. It's the nefesh. It's between your body and your soul. So now what happens? You're gonna have another challenge, and your goal now is to release that energy that was trapped in that ball, in that sphere, in that klipa, in that shell, right? So imagine I have more and more challenges to be patient, to not lose my patience with my child, and every time I lose it, what happens? This gets bigger, it gets more and more light, it gets stronger. That's kind of how addiction works, right? So what happens, we have a nurse here, when someone is addicted to like heroin, what happens? You take heroin, that's pure light, right? You feel amazing. What happens afterwards? The light leaves, your vessel is now empty, you feel that lack, the curtain drops, right? You feel more empty, you wanna chase after that heroin. Where did that light go? It went into the shell of addiction. So what happens? This shell gets stronger. Your addiction is more. You keep wanting it. Okay? This is going to be the same with gossip, with, lying, with cheating, with being rude, with being sarcastic, with being whatever, fill it in.
So if you don't do it, is it forever released?
It's smaller and smaller and smaller because nothing is forever.
You're not like poking a hole and letting it out.
No, nothing is forever. Like I was saying last week, I feel like I keep getting the same scenario. Like within my mind, I have the same scenario over and over. And it's like, dude, it's like the third and fourth time. Why can't I get it right? It's layers. It's not the exact same. So it's kind of the same with that. You're peeling off like an onion. Layers and layers, and the tikkun that we're working on, it'll never be solved. Do you get it? Like you're not gonna ever be like, damn, I am never triggered by anyone.
Okay.
Right? It's just a different level.
Okay.
Tikkun is
That which we're here to correct.
the change.
The challenge, your mission
My
here.
tikkun.
The challenge that you're here, that which you're here to correct. Did you have a?
Yeah, if we're reactive about something, and then as we're coming to the classes, we realize, oh, that's me being reactive, but we do it again anyway. And right after I did, I'm like, I was being reactive. Does the light still get trapped, or because I'm aware?
That's step one. We still did it, but you're aware of it. So how much of it? But being that awareness is everything.
It's crazy. I had a conversation with someone today, like literally, like this conversation exactly. Like I said to him, being aware of the change is step one, and a lot of people get stuck there too, in the awareness, but not able to like move forward through that. And then, if and pushing beyond that, like that's the evolution of change.
Yeah. And it's so hard because as that happens, like let's say let's say I don't know, my daughter triggered me, my husband triggered me, and I snapped at them, or I was passive aggressive, or whatever it was. You now feel the need. What do you want to do? You want to call 5 of your friends and be like, can you believe what my kid did? Can you believe what my husband? You want to vent, but is that venting is also shells. It's shells. If I have one person, 2 people that I'm like, okay, how could I have done this different? And you're having that kind of conversation, that's one thing. But when you're like, yeah, can you believe? And he said this, and what's happening? This is just getting stronger and stronger, right? You're Klippot. So what are you doing? If you go back here, you're putting more space between your body and your soul, right? So it's not a judgment. It's not, ooh, you are gossiping, you're bad. It's not judgment. It's you have space between your body and your soul. And that's lack of light. That's lack of fulfillment. That's lack of being connected. That's our whole goal, right? Yeah.
Question. So let's say you lose it and then you go back and you try to fix it. Does that get rid of the shell, like in a calm way? You talk it out and you hug it out and you try to fix it. Does that start?
So I don't visualize it like poof, now that shell disappeared. I kind of visualize it like, okay, you reduced it or you tried again, like that opportunity comes up again and you have another chance, because it will. It's going to come up a bazillion times.
Well, we did, and then we fixed it, and then something like that happened again the next day.
So every time that happens, it's like working on your biceps, right? Every single time you have that dumbbell in your hand and you're working, it's getting stronger, and you can choose to either work on it or not. So when that urge, let's say someone has a stealing issue, I don't know, just give me something to analyze. Every time that urge comes up and they're dying to do it and they don't do it, they're taking the light that's captured in that shell and releasing it. You get it?
It makes it smaller.
Yes. So then you're connecting your body and your soul. Yeah.
I'm getting stuck on something.
Yes.
When you said you were offended from the week, it reminded me of a lot of things. It's not like let's say you're annoyed at something that happened, and in that moment you don't react, you don't say anything. But 5 hours later, when it's over, you tell your husband, oh, this really bothered me. But you're like, he's like, oh, do you want me to tell them? I'm like, no, I just needed to tell you that I was annoyed, you know? But what if that, it's not a guilt, but what if that like anxiety about it stays in you?
The hurt.
Yeah.
So the hurt that stays with us is for us to work on. That's when you go in and say, what is it in me that's being triggered?
Okay.
What is it in me that person, where's the cavity that they're touching? Because if you didn't have that cavity, it wouldn't hurt you. It wouldn't trigger you. And it's so hard in the moment.
But like, what if it's something that's just triggering to anybody? It's
Okay.
not.
So I think, okay, let's workshop it. If you don't want to give your example, you can give a
I can
hypothetical.
give my example,
Sure.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I hosted Rosh Hashanah Seder last week, and family members that I necessarily didn't want to invite, but didn't want to be left out, invited them. And it was just a series of like very rude and disrespectful events.
Towards you.
Yeah. I'm emotional.
Oh.
So can you describe what you're feeling?
The dad basically like took over the whole Seder. Like didn't let us do it our way. It was the first time. They're like, oh, wash your hands, now we do the challah, now we do this. I was like, but that's not how we want to do things. And then they brought their own zaboon, even though ours was like black kosher. And I went to go put it for them and they're like, oh, we brought our own. And I was like, okay. I'm like literally standing there. And then the last thing was the son came with his fiance. Didn't even say hi, didn't say bye, didn't say thank you. Nothing. Just asked for like 3 bottles of water so he could get back on his bike and ride home because they were religious. And then on top of that, called my husband at like 11 o'clock and is like, do you have a bike you can bring us? The tires ran out of air. I was like, just like no respect. And it was just awful. And I had pneumonia. I was like really sick. And I was just annoyed. And I didn't say anything the whole time because I was like in shock that people were behaving like this. And then they all left and then we were going to bed. And I was like, I was really, really annoyed by your cousin. And like, it wasn't the cousin, it was the family members of the cousin. But I was just like, I don't want to invite them again. Like, I don't want to be disrespected in my home. They didn't even like say thank you. They were just so rude the whole time. And then now I'm hosting the breaking of Yom Kippur. And then his parents were like, oh, can we tell them to come? And I want to say no, but I don't want to be rude. So I don't know. Clearly I'm still annoyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't like talk to anybody about it. I didn't tell his mom. I didn't tell my parents. I just told Harry and that was it. I didn't say anything to anyone.
So it sounds like you didn't seem reactive. You didn't, like, you held back from saying something. And I know you, that you probably were dying to say something.
Oh, I was dying.
And you didn't. So I feel like that's a huge first step.
Right.
And it does feel bad to have people at our house who, you know, when you host and you put so much effort to feel like they're not being...
I spent 3 days cooking, like with pneumonia. And a chest x-ray and a CT scan. And I made all the Seder stuff.
But Sarah, she's hurting so much now. Like, wouldn't it have been better to say something in a non-reactive way? Or maybe once she's calm, then address it with them?
Or even address it now.
But like, I'm not even calm. Like, I'm still, so when do I say, like, when do you talk? Because I'm still like, I still have that like anxiety, like
Hurting.
feeling in me.
Let's break down what hurt you. Was it that they brought their Zavun? Was it that they were doing their own thing? Was it like...
It's that they were like taking over the Seder, but it wasn't even their house. Their house was the next night, which I didn't go to. But it was like not even your place to do that. You know, it's not your home. It's not your first time. It's not, you know.
They've done this before? You're saying it's not your first time?
It's not your first time hosting.
It was her first time hosting.
It was like the first time that our parents didn't do it, you know?
Did you try express in the beginning that like you wanted to lead it? Maybe they used to, not to take away from what you're feeling, but maybe if they would know this is our house and we're gonna do it this way.
Yeah, so my husband like stood up and he's like, oh, well, we usually do that later. And then they continued to just go in the kitchen and wash their hands. And I was like, okay, you're clearly not even listening.
Yeah.
Who's they? Sorry, his parents?
His cousins.
Oh, sorry, I don't understand what it is. Okay.
So I don't think saying something in the moment would have worked because they didn't seem like they were open to hearing it.
But she repressed her feelings.
Right.
Where does that?
So there's a difference between repressing and pausing.
Reflecting.
Yes. So she's processing it now.
No.
And I'm happy you said something to your husband, and it sounds like you said something in like a really...
No, he agreed. And then he went to his mom and he was like, on Monday, and he was like, or no, Friday, sorry. And he was like, it's not your cousin, I just want you to know that, but I don't like the example that the husband and the son are setting in our home. And it's not specifically like the wife, because like she was very helpful and nice, but like it's like, so I don't want to be rude, but it was like the chauvinistic mentality of the husband is not something that we want, and like he told his mom in a way like you should be aware of that and like not, you know, get so close.
Yeah.
Like I understand she's family and I respect that, but like it's not the energy we want in the house. She said it.
I want to go into why you felt hurt. Like, did you feel taken advantage of? Did you feel...
No. I felt disrespected. Like, I didn't know that the reason they didn't want the zaboon was because they thought it wasn't glad kosher, but it was. And then the next day when I was like, his mom said something, I was like, oh, it was glad kosher though. Like, I don't know.
It seems like she doesn't like what they're thinking of her. Is that like they're not thinking that you're
Like they didn't trust you?
yeah, that they what
Yeah, the trust, but I just feel like there was no respect.
recognition.
It's
It's
Respect
not even
for
recognition. I don't need
emotion.
recognition for anything. I just need respect in my own home. Don't bring your own tongue. If you want it to be a certain level of glad kosher, stay at home. You don't need to come. If you want to do the Seder your way, stay at home and do it your way. Like, you don't come into somebody else's home and bring your own food because you don't think theirs is up to the level. If you're not on the same level, then we don't need to do Seder together. That's okay.
It's just
It was
more
more
a religious. It's
I
a
think if she
religious-
knew they
It
were
was
gonna
glad
bring that
kosher
there,
though.
it would've been
All she had to
different.
do was ask me if
She
I got
had
it, and I
known.
did.
Like in my family, we like my
But if
mother-in-law's like,
you
I'm gonna
needed
bring the
your
squash, right?
Right. You
She
potluck
asked
it.
No, but they
I
eat
said
from.
they-
Maybe
they
they were
eat
just
from
I put it on their
everybody's
side of
hands on
the
regular
table. Hopefully they didn't get
Shabbat.
this. I'm like, this is yours.
Oh,
Yeah, they should just ask you because we have family that's
No,
like that. And
no,
whenever
they come
we're
to our home
together,
for-
they bring their own.
They're
food.
there for every other Shabbat and they eat from all
Or
of our
maybe
tables.
Jazz, you had like an expectation, this is your first time hosting,
Yes.
and you wanted it to be your thing, and
Yeah,
you know, like you had an expectation, and I
Yes.
think they kind of like, they stepped on that.
yeah.
It was hurtful.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question? When you're sick, like in the state she was, is your vessel more like?
Mm.
You know how you're a little more sensitive to everything
Oh, I
because
Oh,
everything
yeah.
takes it's so much harder to accomplish. I can't imagine how she put that together.
She
under
had to
those
put a lot of
circumstances.
effort into that.
And I genuinely feel like maybe you weren't you didn't feel appreciated. Like that's how I would feel.
Yeah.
I would feel like I'm unappreciated, like I'm just a doormat, you're entering my house, like you're not asking, it's nice to ask for permission, like can I say this prayer, can I?
Yeah.
I think she wanted it to be more unison and it was more divided.
Yeah.
They were very presumptuous in their
Yeah.
behavior. I don't know, like your relationship with them, like that history, because it's so out of context. You know, like how close are you with them? Do you always spend holidays with them?
They moved here from another state a few years, like in COVID. So his family likes to include them in things,
Right.
so that. But they have
Extended.
family and other friends here too.
Yeah.
But
The kosher thing can be really tough too. Like I feel like we're often in the position where, like our kosher, the way we keep kosher might be stricter than other people, and it's not like, oh, we think we're better than you. So it's just like
It came off
maybe
that way.
sometimes it's embarrassing to ask, like, is this kosher? Because if it's not, you don't want to shame someone.
no, and that's
like,
right. My mother.
Not that it wouldn't be kosher,
No,
but
my
I'm saying go out or
mother-in-law
whatever standard.
literally every
Yeah.
time we're like barbecuing on a Sunday or whatever, she's like, "Is it kosher?" I'm
So
like,
it felt
"Yeah,
like
it's kosher."
intentional.
Yeah, no, that's
Like-
a really I just
And
don't
I'm
put
not
myself in this
offended. I'm not
scenario because I
offended.
don't want to go anywhere where I even have to ask.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
offended.
Yeah.
It's my mother-in-law. Like, I love her
Yeah.
like my own mom, but like I know she's very like thing about it. So she'll
Yeah.
ask me and I'll say yes.
It's
I don't
like
even
didn't
think-
ask, it was like
I don't
done
even
with
think
it.
it was the food. I think it was the attitude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Came
sometimes
with
it's just
it.
an energy
How it
where
was
people are just
delivered.
Yes.
obnoxious
Yeah.
subtly, and you just feel that.
That's why I was like,
Yeah.
what's like your communication with them, like
That's so
normally?
hard.
Are
When
you
you
really
work so
rude like
hard.
that?
What
No.
should she do for I'm curious for Yom Kippur?
I'm not going to go into what you should do, but what I will go into is how Chana was saying that she's also, with food. I don't
Yeah.
think the issue was the food.
It
I
wasn't.
think the issue
the
is
energy
how
that they
It was the
Yes.
approach.
how you felt treated.
It was the
Yeah.
approach. And if you wanted to bring your own whatever dish it was, that's fine.
Yeah.
Call me beforehand and say,
Yeah.
"Hi,
Do it
we're
the
bringing
right way.
this because this is how we want to
Yeah.
do it." Respect,
Yeah.
fine, do that. But like, as I'm putting the food for you, and you're like, "No, we brought our own."
So I'm going to break that down. We started this with, if it wasn't in you, you wouldn't feel triggered.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not my family, so it's much easier. But I've been in situations where people will bring their own stuff. I could care less.
Yeah.
I could care less.
Okay.
But if someone is munching, I can't stand it.
You guys, I told her I didn't bring anything to
And I'm saying this to say that it's so individual. Like, although what they did is objectively rude, would it trigger each of us the same way? Probably not.
Okay. I see.
And
that.
to sit with that, and and I could see that you're so hurt, and I would be so hurt too. I've hosted. Hosting is so draining because you give so much of yourself, and we want it to go a certain way that we imagine, you know, like the holiday, whatever, and when it doesn't. And I've been on that end with in-laws, extended families, so I know what that feels like, and it's a lot. But like, sit with it. Like, what was it? Was it the control? Was it the chauvinism? What about the chauvinism? Because it's not like your husband is going to be like that. Like, what was it? Was it that it didn't go how, like, and I don't mean you have control issues, but I mean, were you imagining this way and it was hard to surrender and let it go however it went, even if they're putting their own meat, like, you know, do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
And it's not easy.
I understand that. I think it was the chauvinism starting in the Seder to like control the Seder, because the husband wanted to give a certain, this is what Farid said and I agreed with it after the fact, wanted to give a certain impression to the fiance, the future daughter-in-law, and the son. And I think he wanted to like set that, like how it's supposed to look and how it's supposed to be.
It's just
But
so
it wasn't
deep
his
rooted.
home to do that.
Right.
Like I'm sure he did that the next night. I wasn't there at his own house. But it was that. It started with that. And just like the unawareness of the fact that like people do things differently.
So whatever was triggered in you
Yeah.
from that scenario is going to happen again. And again and again and again and again.
Okay.
So sit with that feeling that you have,
Okay.
and like, where is it? What is it? Like, try to identify. And it's so hard because I've been going through it this week too with my own triggers.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because it's so uncomfortable.
Yes.
And to sit with it and to feel pain and to feel uncomfortable and to feel uncertainty and to feel, but it's not me, but it's them. Remember, they are literally an illusion. It's like a puppet, right? Like a.
But it's hard to bring that into your home. Like, one thing if you have to see them in a
It's gonna come closer and closer. It's gonna come closer and closer. So at this point, it's your extended relatives. If we don't solve it, it's gonna be your husband. It'll be your child. It'll keep coming closer until you.
Yes. Deal with it.
I love when it's friends and it's not my kids. You know, I love it. I'm like, yes, it's the friends who's triggering me and not my daughter.
Okay, so then last night, something else came up. And like literally the whole day I've been like, I told Farid, and he told me last night, and then this morning I'm like, when he called, I'm like, oh, it's really bothering me still.
Thank you.
And then he's like, oh, he was like, you know, justifying it, and I was like, okay. But I like still want to run and tell somebody. But I keep telling myself there's no point to that.
If you need to process and you're telling someone who will help you process, not someone who's gonna be like, yeah, that's like, not someone who's gonna.
Somebody to like egg it on.
Yeah, someone who's really gonna be like, you know what, Jasmine, let's break it down. And we all know we have those people in our lives.
Yeah.
If that helps you process and figure out what's going on, then you're leveling up with it. That's a good thing.
Because I feel the guilt if I'm like running to tell this person.
So don't run to it. Do it in a more proactive way,
Okay.
where it's not like, I'm so angry, I'm gonna call them right now and like wait until you're not bubbling. Do it in a proactive way for the purpose of understanding and growing and connecting to release whatever that Klippot is within you.
Okay.
Goal being connecting your body and soul and connecting to source.
So once she realizes what the trigger was, then what? Then what? When it
So you're
presents
just
itself again?
you're just a little more prepared, right? Like when you know the enemy, you're a little bit more prepared for it. You know what it looks
So
like.
then you decide whether you're going to be reactive when it shows up again or proactive.
Well, no one's deciding to be reactive. It's how we fall short. But yeah, then when the moment comes, you're like, ooh, this is my chance.
Yeah.
It's that thing. It's, you know.
But you really have to dig deep and find out what it is. How do you? Okay.
So that's when therapy kicks
Yeah.
in. That's when analyzing, journaling, whatever it is, you know, this is the tool. And then you go deeper with however you need to do it.
I feel like we can all resonate with your story, like literally everybody, honestly. And it's happened to me a lot of times where I'm really upset about something and I will also just keep it to myself. But my question now, and I'll connect it to last week's class when we talked about proactive communication, once she calms down and she's like, you know what, I'm ready to talk about them, in her mind, or in all of our minds, my question is, what should we be going into the conversation with? Because I know we shouldn't have an agenda. So how do we go into that with like an open...
Love it. Ready? Okay, I'm gonna read the slides to you guys. Okay, so confrontation is not, so I sent this to you guys last week. I don't know if anyone printed it, but I'll read it. Confrontation is not teaching someone a lesson or getting something off your chest. To confront properly and achieve the desired results, we must find the message for yourself. What is it that you need to change? So before you speak to the person, that is the work that you need to do, okay? Number 2, meditate to come from a giving place and close the space between both of you. So if you remember last week, and I wish I pulled up those notes too, we went through different ways where you could kind of like empathize with them to put yourself in their shoes. So you could kind of, which is a very hard thing for me. I know other people have that ability a little bit more, to feel where they're coming from. Like what was that person thinking? Why would they do that? And when you are able to do that, you're able to come from a giving place and immediately you're closing that gap. So it helps, right? So it's like a little chart.
What was the first thing you said? Confrontation.
Find the message for you. Find the message
It's
for
not
you.
just getting it off your chest.
No, it's never getting it off your
I
chest.
spoke to a rabbi therapist last week about something, and it was like someone who I felt like had really wronged me, and I was expecting that the person was going to apologize. They never did, but I was like preparing for what I would say and how I would forgive, and it never happened. But
in conversations like that.
but I was preparing myself for it, and he actually told me, the therapist, whether you forgive or not forgive him or what conversation happens is irrelevant. You focus on your healing, and forgiveness will be like a natural part of your healing. You'll be able to tolerate or not figure it out because you will have healed within yourself. So like having them over or not having them over, that will come to you with time when you heal within yourself rather than the...
But it's your
I mean,
home. It's your home, it's your safe space.
100%.
Always, that comes first. I feel like, always. So if you don't feel like a comfort level, do not force yourself into like a position you don't want to be in.
You might become void.
You can tell them ahead of time. You could say, we would love to have you over. I just want to let you know my meat is glot kosher, but if you're still not comfortable with it, I completely understand. Let me know if you're going to bring your own food. We have we do the Seder this way. We would love for you to join us in how we do ours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
But she can only have that conversation once she's healed her
Yeah.
own feelings. Having that right now, she
Yeah,
might
right
not
now
be
I'm gonna be
genuine
like,
with herself.
better not bring your glot kosher. So I'm not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. So the steps. Okay. Close the space within you. Number 2, close the space between you and others. So the space within you is working on why is it in your movie? Why is it happening to you? Why are you being triggered? And kind of going into that. The space between you and others is what we said, like kind of put yourself in their shoes. What are they feeling that they did this? Maybe they were feeling so nervous that it's Rosh Hashanah and we don't want to ask and we don't know. Like, I have no idea, but I'm just trying to, and then, some people get so caught up in the procedure of religion, right? That they kind of forget the overall thing.
Yeah.
And I could say this because I've seen it where they feel like, oh, but step 1 and step 2, and it's like a 10-step
That's
thing.
what happened with the son and the fiance. They
And-
went, they changed their clothes, they got water, they were so focused on like the
Doing it,
task of
yes.
leaving without driving or everything they needed to do to be prepared to leave the house and walk home or bike home or whatever, that they didn't even say thank you. And then I realized after that they were just so focused on that they didn't even realize like they should say thanks for having us or something. Like
Such a
it
shame.
escaped their
Like,
mind.
That's their shortcoming.
pass away.
That's them. That's not you.
It's not on them.
I know that's
Yeah.
us.
Yes.
We said afterward, we're like, they're just so young, they're just so oblivious, like they haven't figured
And
it out
sometimes
yet.
you have a little bit more like, you know what I mean? Like you learn something and you're like an example, when you're in grade school, or I remember personally, I'd be in grade school and I went to an Ashkenazi school and they would teach us how to do something, and then I'd come home and I'd look at my Sephardic, Persian, FOB grandpa and I'd be like, you have no idea what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, he did.
Yeah.
This was our tradition. I didn't know.
Yes.
So I'm saying this to kind of get in their head and have empathy for that, so you're able to do closing the space between you and others. Okay? The third one is the other person has a desire to listen or be open. I don't know if you're going to hit that one because I don't know them.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay? And then you confront.
So only confront if you know that they can be open. But some of these, especially these kinds of people, could go through a lifetime not being open.
But you know what? It's not your job.
They're young.
They're like virtual realities. They don't exist.
He's 24.
So if you were to not listen to the third step,
Okay. What is the third step? Imagine I have this picture. This is the vessel. This is the other person. This is her relative. They don't have a vessel, right? It's a half cup, tiny thing of water. And I'm about to pour this huge pitcher. They don't have a vessel for it. What are you doing? You're causing chaos.
so you're losing light.
So there's 0 point. You don't want to do it. Yeah.
Someone on the Chag told me that someone showed up and he's very big energy and kept like showing up without being invited, and I was just letting it be. And one of the other guests says to me, "It's a confrontunity for you." I'm like, "A confrontation opportunity?"
That's awesome.
I was like, "It's not now."
You were like,
Then it's not the time.
I mean, it's a good time for her to say, why are they in my movie, right? Like, they're there for a
What?
reason.
Yeah. Now is the time just to
Yeah.
figure that out. Yeah.
So the last step is confrontunity.
Yeah, confrontation. I like that. Okay, so step one, I'm gonna go through this. This was supposed to be last week's class, but I'm happy to do more of it now. Close the space within you. Lesson. If you're upset, it means there's a message for you. You cannot simply jump to how to approach the person. You must first reflect on why it's in your movie and what is the tikkun the creator is trying to show you. By finding the spiritual message for you, you will link your body and soul. The light will flow through you to the situation at hand. It will no longer be your reactive nature dealing with the situation, but rather the light flowing through your soul that will take over. So you're not even focused on how it will turn out.
okay.
Do you get it? Maybe they'll lead the Seder. Maybe you'll lead the Seder. Who knows? If you don't find at least one message for you about what you need to change, you may need to repeat the challenge in the future. Advice. If you're having trouble finding the message, ask the light for guidance and strength. It's also good to ask a mentor or a friend what they might see as the message for you. Close the space, step 2. Close the space between you and others. Lesson. You have received at least one message of what you need to change. Now it's time to set the intention for your confrontation. Our intention needs to be to create oneness and unity to some degree. Our goal is to ultimately close the space between us and them, or the parties involved, not to widen the space. Saying things like, to hell with them, or I don't want to deal with them anymore, is not going to get you closer to the light and will ultimately force you to repeat the challenge. Closing the space doesn't mean you have to be their best friend or that you have to keep them in your life. It simply means the negative energy and tension is not there anymore. Advice. Try to close your eyes and visualize how you would feel if the person involved was someone you really cared for. For example, your child or a parent. How would your feelings towards them change? Step 3. The other person has a desire to listen or be open. Lesson. If a person respects what you have to say and is open to hear what you have to say, it means they have a vessel to receive what you have to say. Without a vessel, a person will never hear your lesson. It's your responsibility to ensure there is a vessel. If not, your words will land on deaf ears and you will have wasted your light. As long as they are somewhat open, they have a vessel to hear what you're saying. Advice. Ask the Creator for help and guidance. Don't be impatient, but also don't shut down and forget about it. Communication is important, and if you ask the Creator for guidance, you will be given an opening.
So what do you do that they don't have a vessel? Just try and try and try and try.
You don't try. You don't. You can't approach them.
You
You
see,
can't.
that's okay if you know that the person is not open and doesn't have a desire
Oh.
to hear what you say.
Okay, I'll give you an
it's okay
example.
to just
Last
let
week,
it be
yes.
and not approach them, not say hi to that person.
Last week, something happened, and it took me 4 days of like this,
Wow.
where I was like, I need to tell the person, I need to tell the person, I need to tell the person should know, the person should know, the person should know. Everybody sees this, the person should know. And I sat there, and my husband's like, this person will not hear you. Don't do it. It's just gonna be chaos. And I had to be like, okay.
So do you resolve the conflict still
Within
like,
me.
within yourself?
Within
Is that
me.
100% resolution? If within
I-
you you've resolved it,
I
and you're
have
not
to
talking to the
resolve
person?
it. Listen, do I feel resolved from last week? Yes. Is it gonna happen again? Probably. Am I
Somebody
gonna be
close to
triggered
you?
again? Yes. And I just hope it's like that onion, that if I was like triggered at a level 10, I hope next time I'm at a 9.5.
But is it somebody close to you? Or does somebody have to deal with it all the time?
That's always who it is.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be the guy in the grocery store. That's easy, right? And it's just gonna get closer and closer and closer.
How did you know? Like, how did he know that they didn't have?
We've
enough
had
of these two
history.
It's happening.
We've had history. We know the person won't be like, oh, let me reflect on that. You're absolutely, that's not how it's gonna go.
Sarah, you keep saying it's going to get closer and closer. But
Yeah.
if you do resolve it within yourself, does it somehow become further and further?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
That's when you know you've kind of resolved it.
yes,
It's like a sign that
Yes.
you've resolved it
Yes.
because it stops coming in your life.
yes.
It's kind of like a clue, right?
Exactly. It's kind of how the universe talks to
Yeah,
you.
I
When
like
you're not
that.
getting messages, they become louder, right?
Sure.
First the universe is whispering to you
Right.
certain changes you have to make. And if you don't proactively make those changes, life will make you make those changes. And you don't want to wait until you get like a doctor's report or a bill for
Yeah.
something or a lawsuit. You want to proactively
I like
make those
So I have
changes.
to look for those kind of clues out
Yeah.
in the universe.
Yeah.
I like that.
But if the goal is to have unity and to set the consciousness of unity, and
Yes.
you know that you can't
Yes.
unify with this person,
Okay.
then
What is your definition of unifying? So this person,
Very interesting.
they're in my life. There's fond feelings both ways. But this person will not be able to understand this concept. Do I feel misunderstood? Yes. Do I feel like how close can I really be if I can't say this and you can't hear me? Yes. But it doesn't mean I can't empathize. Okay, maybe this person, he or she had a rough childhood. This is their shortcoming. This is their tikkun. This is their challenge. They're probably suffering too. Hurt people,
so that
right? So I have to dig into all of that so I could be like, okay, I get it. And then ultimately it doesn't bother me anymore. It's compounded when there's other people involved. Like if your husband and your children and other friend, that kind of compounds it, but it's never the other person, right? It's never the other person. The other person doesn't even exist
then why would you empathize?
so that I could create that unity with another soul. Do you get it? Because the whole purpose is that, go back to Kabbalah 1 class, whatever it was, 2 or 3. If you're supposed to be robbed Thursday at 12 o'clock, someone is going to come and rob you. Let's say Joe is going to rob you, and Joe took a Kabbalah class and said, oh, I'm not going to rob her. Okay, somebody else will come. The only way you bypass being robbed is if you work on yourself so that you don't need that challenge to happen because you jumped a level. So if this person, this friend, this whoever, this family member is hurting me, I have to work on whatever is in me to move up a level so that it no longer hurts me. Is it hard? It's debilitatingly hard, no matter what level you're on.
So basically, they were sent to you.
Yes.
This is your mission.
Yes.
So that's what you have to realize.
It's your gift. It's your opportunity to get light.
The best thing I learned in this class, if I could share,
It's a gift, because if you don't have that challenge, you don't get light. Right? Kabbalah 1 class 1. Without the challenge, there's no light.
So much of modern psychology now is like, doesn't feel good, cut them out, cut them out, cut them out, cut them out. And
Yes, that's true.
cut out what's not serving
You gotta cut out with your family.
And then we have to create unity. Oh.
You don't have to be best friends with them, but you have to fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can cut out everyone. It's going to come closer and closer and closer.
I think the biggest thing I learned, if I can share, and this is the thing that sticks with me, is closing the bridge so Satan doesn't enter. I don't think to pause. I don't know why. It's been like 3-4 years. The pause is so hard for me, but every time I picture whatever Satan is, and it like really helps me like kind of debilitate me. Like, okay,
Start to get your core.
Yes.
That's been the
Oh my
best
son.
thing for me, and like an instant for me.
So think every time you're pausing, what are you doing? You're piercing through your body and soul. In that moment of pause, you've instantly connected.
Mm-hmm. And every time
Like pausing meaning, sorry to interrupt, I think I'm less loud. So pausing meaning like not saying anything.
In the moment when you're feeling that.
Okay.
And you're only speaking with intention to close the gap. You're not
To make things
speaking
better.
to feel better. You're not speaking, what was the word we used? To dump or like
Yeah.
blame.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have an intention to speak for peace. I don't know
Yeah,
if I'm saying
yeah,
this correctly.
yeah. With no, like, whether they apologize, they don't. They get it, they don't. They change, they don't. You have to be okay with however it goes. Yeah?
Yeah, no, I had like an issue, I confronted like a friend about a behavior, a choice she made that really hurt my feelings. And so I grapple with that because, you know, you don't want to like put like your own stuff on people. Like she made a choice that she was clearly comfortable with, even though it ended up hurting me. I don't think that was not her intention. It was like, to me, I just wouldn't have done what she did. But to her, it was like I wasn't thinking of it that way. And I'm like, well, how could you not think of it that way? Like that situation. But then she did receive me and receive what I said, and then offered up an apology and said like I messed up. But I still go back to what she did, and I'm like, oh, that's a weird mess up. Like, as a friend, like friend to friend, you know? It's like the choice that she chose, to me, was just...
It sounds like you managed it really beautifully.
I felt bad for, like, dumping it on her.
Did you dump it or did you... No, I think it's okay to say something. And it looked like you speaking to her brought some closeness. This person understood. You resolved something, they understood for next time. That sounds awesome. I think where you're stuck at is it's still hurting you. You have to sit there and figure out what's the message for you.
Oh, yeah, no, I 100% know.
Yeah.
And it does come up over and over.
Yeah.
And over. Over and over.
Yeah.
How do you figure out what the message is for you? Like,
You just
can't each person have like hundreds of triggers?
100%. You have to dig deep. You have to, like, in my situation with the things that come up with Maman or whatever, I don't even know. I feel like it's so objectively annoying and wrong and rude, but it doesn't bother her.
I was just gonna say,
That's
we
interesting.
don't, yeah.
It doesn't bother
trigger
her.
me. Everyone has different
Well,
triggers.
it sounds that would be my
Wow.
personal
Well,
reason.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't
She has to deal with
I
it
have to
too.
deal with them.
It wouldn't
I have
matter.
to deal with the same people.
Yeah, it doesn't bother her. She's like, okay, so they said that. And I'm like,
What's your main trigger?
I feel like when I feel taken advantage of,
Yeah, I see it.
when I feel like they're being manipulative, when I feel like they're being like clever and like,
Cunning.
yes, and it's like, come on,
Yeah.
come on,
Right. Not genuine.
yes, yes, like just
No.
straight up,
That's really true.
and it,
For somebody else to like
it's not,
Yeah.
Because everyone has different intentions.
benign things.
Like they use their phone to call us.
I mean, I don't know specific
Triggers are your mirrors.
It's, they're your mirrors. So I'm gonna go through the last one just so I feel like we completed this one. So when you confront someone, make sure you don't feel lack. You should feel completely satisfied and whole before you speak. Remove all expectations of what you want to happen. You're here to share a message to bring you both closer to the light. Be completely okay with the outcome not being in your favor. Overcome your need to be right or to make things fair. That's a very hard one.
That's kind of like what you're feeling, like don't feel the lack after everything you went through. I feel like you kind of feel some
I did. I sent it last time, but I'll resend it. I'll resend it.
Extra class just to talk.
Confrontation.
For example, if you like have this person
okay with
for
that
all
lack,
your
I guess.
life that's close to you,
You can't change it.
and it's always
It's like
So,
sitting
like,
at, like shitty
the thing, and then everybody knows he's wrong, but he's the only thing he's right, and he just, verbally abusive and things. How do you deal with stuff like that? Like, as much as like, I stay quiet, I don't say anything. I know it's coming from a good place, but he doesn't get it. How do you?
This is someone you have to have relationships with. So remember, before you were born, and we're going back to Kabbalah 1 Class 1, that based on your tikkun and what you came here to learn, you're going to attract people and situations that touch that exact
But
tikkun.
this is person that I grew up with.
They were in
So,
your life for that
one.
reason. So before you were born, God decided Nanda's going to have this triggering person in her life to keep pushing this button in her so she could work on it.
And that person is a blessing in her life.
That person
in
is
reality.
It is a blessing, yes, but definitely it is. It's my brother, But it just, it got like, he had a stroke after that, just became like really bad. Like he's great, he's fine, he's amazing, the best brother you can ever ask for. But it's a temper, and the whole time I was like, oh, it's my fault. Now that he had the stroke, it kind of like everybody's noticing it. I don't think he can hide his temper. So it becomes like he doesn't even understand. I don't know if he gets it or not. It's just really, it's really hard to explain without making him sound like a monster, which he's not.
No.
He's an amazing person.
So that's his shortcoming. Imagine he blows a fuse. That's his tikkun. That's his.
And everything he has that he does wrong is on me.
He dumps it on you. He puts it on
Yeah,
you.
this is you what you're doing. I'm like, you just did that. And then I'm like, I'm going crazy. Is it me? Then I'm asking my family members, and it's just like the same thing happens to us. But they don't do it. He doesn't do it to them. He does it to
They
me.
usually find like a safe space
Because
or
I'm his
someone
closest
who
person.
You're allowing him to meet like
I did, but for a long time. But then I
So now you make boundaries.
I just stopped talking to him for 3 years.
Is that okay to set boundaries?
100%. Boundaries are very
It's
good.
They
not
don't work.
reactive.
No, if you listen, my tendency is to shut down. Okay, my tendency is that's annoying. I'm not going. Right? I don't care. To hell with them. That's my way at how I'm reactive. Other people are explosive. They're confrontational. So depending on where you're coming from, it is or isn't okay. If I'm shutting down and shutting out people, I have to think to myself, okay, I'm being reactive. Keep it open and go through those steps. But if somebody else is doing that because they're holding back from snapping, that's amazing. And it's 100% okay to have
shutting
boundaries.
down because you still you're so reactive that you don't want to put yourself in that scenario. So maybe it's not a bad thing.
But
Like,
I
I'm
have
not
to
gonna
be
go
mindful.
because I feel like I'm gonna punch the
Because,
person,
so
you know?
the class that I had prepared actually spoke about that.
Really, I'm just saying like
That we, does anyone have the printout from last class? The tikkuns, the middle section? Okay. Yes. So we spoke about how you have all the different kinds of tikkun, ways that you're reactive are right here in that middle section. One of them I'm gonna call to hell with it tikkun, or the screw it tikkun. Yeah, screw it. Screw them. Screw this. Duh. If you're going there, you're not dealing with it. You're just shutting down. If you're doing it for like a minute or two to pause, it could be a year, it could be 5 years if you're actively in that place.
So
But if you're just like, oh, forget them, I'm done with them.
What if you're not like forget them? What if you're just like, I don't have the capacity to deal with this person, and I've decided to shut them out of my life?
You could create the boundaries, but you still have to come from a giving place. You still have to, why is it in my movie? What is the lesson for me?
I would love to meet these people by the